Hey everyone, I'm Mark Suter with Primitive Texas and Louisiana, and today I'm going to show you how to make a fire that uses basically no tinder. So by definition, tinder is light, fluffy, fibrous, airy material, that will be able to be blown into a flame. So good examples are dried grasses, cedar bark, the dried inner bark of cottonwood, anything light and fibrous that will take a coal and be able to be blown into a flame is good tinder. This tinderless fire I actually discovered while testing myself a couple winters ago. I like to go out and test myself against different circumstances occasionally. It improves my skills, and I also learn variations on old skills when I do that. And so I was out a couple winters ago, and it had been raining for 2 days straight, and it was in the high 30s, which is cold for here in Texas. And I was testing myself to get a fire going to just warm up and cook some things on, and everything was soaked. I mean, everything that you could imagine on the landscape was soaked. There were no dry tinder sources whatsoever. So I tried a lot of different things, and failed a lot of times until I finally made a major breakthrough. When I finally decided to try something I'd never tried before, which is I'm going to show you in just a minute, it actually worked, and it was actually it could have been a lifesaver if I was in a real survival emergency. So what I did was I found an old dead tree, and it doesn't have to be this tall. It can be smaller, but it needs to be where it's rotten to the state of where it's punky. You can see here I can push, and it's kind of spongy or punky. It's not crumbling completely apart and powdery. It's just punky, and that's great. Even in wet weather, the punky parts on the inside will stay dry while the outside gets wet. I used to think that the whole thing would be saturated wet, but it's not true. When you cut into it, the interior will be dry, and you can flake that off into a pile about the size of a softball and use that for your tinder. And I don't consider it tinder because it's not light and fluffy and fibrous. I consider it, punky wood flakes. So it's a real lifesaver. You can use it in dry weather as well, of course, but wet weather, it's a real lifesaver. So I'm going to demonstrate kind of how to get it out of this old stump right here real quick. It's best to find a standing tree if you can. You can also pick up pieces on the ground though, and they'll work too occasionally, as long as they're not, in a puddle of water or something. All right, so I'm going to kind of test this for flakiness. Yep, looks pretty good. It's been raining here, by the way, off and on lately, by the way, and the outside's slightly damp, but it was nothing compared to the time I first discovered it. But if you'll look here, this wood can be flaked into very tiny little flakes, and that can be made into a pile that you're going to put your coal into once you get your coal going. So then that can be blown into a flame eventually with kindling little tiny sticks on top of it. So I'm gonna actually take this and a couple pieces that fell here, as well as this old piece right here, and then I'm gonna go to my fire pit area and I'll explain it further. I am back over to my fire pit area, and I forgot to mention earlier, I did take a couple flat pieces of bark off of that old dead tree to put on the ground to pad the punky wood against the moisture in the soil. So I did get a couple of bark strips from that dead tree too, and I put them down. Okay, so I got my punky wood over here that is spongy but not so powdery it's falling apart, and I'm just going to take a cutting tool. You can take a knife and pound on it with a stick. In this case I have a machete. You can also use a hatchet or an axe. Okay, just splitting it, trying to get to that core. Here we go. Y'all see that? All right. Well, that stuff in there is really dry, as opposed to the outside. It's been getting rained on. All right. So by the way, when I first learned this that day, it's actually, it had been raining for 2 days and in the 30s and actually snowed that night. It was in November, a couple winters ago. So man, it was really rough weather. But anyhow, this is a big discovery for us here at Primitive Texas and Louisiana. I'm sure other people in the survival community have learned this as well, but it was groundbreaking for us. And you know, if you've never tried it or don't know about it, it could really be a lifesaver. So I wanted to share it. All right, I'm also sure the Native Americans, of course, knew how to do it. So what I'm doing here, what I've been doing, is putting my my punky wood, breaking it up into tiny little bitty flakes. Okay, now you can break it up into bigger flakes, or even just put it on the ground and put your coal on it and let it burn into it. And it will work either way, bigger flakes or straight on it, but the more tiny flakes will allow it to light quicker. All right, now it's not going to light still as fast as traditional tinders, because it doesn't have that loftiness, but it will light. You just have to work. You have to work at it a while. All right, so I'm breaking up my pieces. I'm making them flaky, making them little bitty flakes, putting it on there. And that should be enough for now. You can always add more later after you get your coal in there, when you're trying to blow it into a flame. But that should be enough for now, and I'll save my extra right here for later. All right. So if the ground was really wet right now, I'd have everything on stacked sticks off the ground, but the ground has dried a little bit thanks to the sun being out today. So I'm not too worried about it. But I do have some different sizes of kindling over here. Some small firewood for whenever we do get that going, we can start putting gradually larger kindling on there, starting with pencil size, and then slightly larger, and then, you know, bigger and bigger. Okay, I'm ready to generate the coal. I'm going to use the hand drill method to do that right now, I think. This is my hand drill kit made out of deer buckskin that I've handmade. I've got a main shaft right here that holds the drills or the spindles, and then a top pocket that holds my fireboards. All right. In this case, I'm going to use a goldenrod drill on a trumpet vine fireboard. It's also called trumpet creeper, but it's a great combination for Texas and Louisiana. And then we'll get that coal going and get it on our punky wood pile there. All right. I want to have something on the ground to not only prevent moisture from seeping up into my fireboard, but also to catch my coal. In this case, I have just a piece of bark. All right. Okay, got a coal there, that over there. Make sure it doesn't stick to my fireboard. Bring it over to my punky wood. Drop it in there very slowly. All right. Catch my breath. And then I'm gonna give it a minute and then slowly start blowing on it. This can take quite a while. We'll see how long it takes. If it takes real long, we'll fast forward it. But I want you to see the whole burning process. I used to think that this would just smolder and you could never blow it into a flame if I tried this, but I was very wrong when I thought that. Because in the past I've used punky pieces of wood to carry fire from camp to camp in live grapevine baskets, and I've used it for smudge sticks and other stuff like that. But I never knew before this that you could actually start a fire with it, flame and all. So it's really amazing. All right, so it's starting to catch. See if you guys can see that burning a little bit. The wind's helping me a little. All right, we got a good coal there, consuming the flakes. I'm gonna add a little bit more. You don't have to keep adding to it, but it's optional. But it'll burn for a very long time like this. All right, it's starting to get a little bigger. What we want to do now is start adding the very little tiny pieces of wood that Houston, my son, helped me harvest. Come on over here real quick, Houston. Houston also helped me dig the fire pit with his digging stick. But Houston helped me harvest some kindling, and we're gonna start adding that very tiny pieces here right now. Okay, I'm gonna get on the, Houston, get over here, and I'm gonna break up a couple pieces for you to add to it. Yeah, trying to get in the smoke. Here, get right here. All right, we're gonna slowly add these real tiny pieces to it, just like you would any fire, but in this case, you don't have to have the fire structure built ahead of time or anything. Here you go, Houston. Got some cockleburrs in your sock. All right, very slowly, very gently put those on there. And we're gonna, very gently, okay? And we're gonna start blowing on it here in a minute. It's gonna take a little bit, but we're gonna get it. All right, let's stop right there for now and keep blowing on it. All right, we got flame. Now that we got flame, we can start adding some slightly bigger stuff. Okay, Houston, here you go. Just add a couple at a time, okay? That was quicker than last time. That was pretty quick. Sometimes it takes, 30 minutes before it'll flame up if it's really been wet, but you just got to keep at it and not give up. It will flame up eventually. All right, so go ahead, Houston, add some more. There you go. All right, at this point, you have it when you have sustained flame, and you don't need to add any more punky wood, any more spongy wood or anything. You can just keep adding your larger size sticks. Again, we're gonna just keep adding our slightly larger ones. There you go. And of course, if you wanted the fire to go all night, something like that, then just keep adding larger ones until you get to logs. And then we can save all this extra punky wood, the spongy wood, for next time. So come here, Houston. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Spongy or punky wood, the tinderless fire with really no tinder. It's a lifesaver. So practice it and learn it. Thank you. That's it.